Hello and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program and welcome back to RP1. In the last episode we mentioned that I had recently picked up a joystick and that has renewed my interest in flying in Kerbal Space Program. So I think we're going to translate some of that over to the RP1 playthrough. This is going to be another sort of long episode, but there is an eventual success, but I wanted to include my whole thought process and how I went about getting to the point where I make success. But if you're not interested in seeing the plenty of failures that we have, you can go ahead and skip to this time code right here. So as we load in, we're going to look at our management window, and we have quite a bit of time before we unlock orbital rocketry. So that's why I decided to pick up the xplane program, because we want to be doing something and we want to be able to make some science while we're waiting for the next part. And rather than just time warping until that technology is completed, let's make use of that time. We have very little science, so we're only going to be able to unlock the first node of planes, but that is only one science, so that's pretty nice. We'll be able to save the rest of that for the second node, and this allows us to have certain jet engines and procedural wings and stuff, as well as allowing us to air launch our vehicle, so we won't necessarily have to take off from the runway every time, which will help. So yeah, the next node is going to be 4 science, but we're going to be able to do a lot more with that, and planes will be able to give us science as well. We'll be able to run certain experiments during that time, so it'll be a good way of maintaining our R&D production. So yeah, we only have 3.6, so we're not going to be able to do anything there. So we're going to go ahead and move this up so it's the next thing we work on. It's only going to take 9 days, so that's pretty good. But let's go ahead and accept the program. We're first going to take a look at our early satellites program, and we're only in this for about 4 years, and the program speed is fast, but we get about 100 grand each year that we do it. And that's pretty nice, but I think we're going to want a little more money than that, because we're eventually going to be able, we're going to need that to launch the larger scale rockets that's going to be required in earlier and heavier satellites. So let's check out xplane research. As we can see here, there's a few contracts that need to be done, quite a few actually. These are all required ones. And the payout is a little bit differently. It kind of peaks towards the middle, and as this current setup goes, we only get 100 grand during the after year 4. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at breakneck. We get 100 grand after year 3, so that's nice. It's a little bit better, but we have to do it a little bit quicker. But we get a little more money each year, so it's something worth considering. We have to have some careful deliberation, but we have plenty of confidence. Like, we have over 1400 confidence, so I mean, might as well take it on breakneck. That's what you use confidence for, is to activate programs. So let's go ahead and spend that 600 and start our X-planes. And that's going to unlock us a new leader once we reach a certain milestone in the program. So that's kind of nice. So let's go ahead and grab our contract. There is only the one contract available to us, and that's to break the sound barrier. And with that early node, with that first node of X-planes, we should be able to manage this. But rather than time warping forward to unlock that, even though it's a very short time, we're just going to build and test using experimental parts, so that way we don't waste any time dealing with it. Now, there's a pre-made craft that the RP1 comes with. This is the jet trainer, but as far as my knowledge at the moment, it was not capable of completing this contract, so I was going to create my own instead. This actually, I found out later, some more information about flying in FAR in general, that's Ferrum Aerospace Research, that this jet trainer might have been able to do it. But for now, I'm like, this won't work, let's just build our own. Now, I did not record the footage of me building this. It took quite a bit and a lot of tinkering. I owe a lot of this design to Calvin McClure, as most RP1 YouTubers do. He's the ultimate kind of authority on how to build planes in RP1, and his videos, even though are pre-launch complex and leaders, or excuse me, LCNP, Launch Complex and Programs. So they're a little outdated. However, his tutorials on building the actual planes itself is still very much holds up today. So I didn't record the footage of this, but if you want, he would be a better authority on how to get to where I'm at here. So just take note that this was my best interpretation from watching his videos. In a later episode, we will actually be building a jet from scratch, and so I'll go through that and go through my entire process of how I build and how I put the wings together and what have you. But for now, we're just going to work with this little X-plane. I'm currently looking at all the engines that we have and which has the most amount of upgrades, because I want to be able to utilize similar technology and upgrade it more. As luck will have it, the XLR11 is the one that I'm looking for. And we already have the ability of upgrading it because we have unlocked different sciences, different engines and things like that. Those have come with config upgrades to these engines as well, not just the rocket ones. So there is a little bit of a benefit in starting the X-plane programs later. You have access to better technology. So here's one of my first mistakes, and I strongly encourage anyone watching this video, well, I guess I strongly encourage you to, learn from mistakes, learn from other YouTubers, and watch how they try to work their designs. And if they show you what mistakes they made, it's always nice to learn from their mistakes and not have to make them yourself. But this mistake that I made was thinking that the shorter the craft, the lighter it would be, and the lighter it would be, the faster it would go. But I will later learn that that is not the case. And so, but we'll get there when we get there. So currently, I'm trying to line up the engine and the tank to be centered through the body of the craft. I also have access to higher quality materials, which means I have lighter materials to work with. So that's also going to give me a leg up on this X-plane program, being able to have aluminum stringer tanks, or even isogrid tanks, which are 40% lighter than all the others. So hopefully we'll have a good start to this program. So now I'm just trying to line things up evenly. You'll find that in plane making in RP1, the majority of your time is just adjusting things by just micro amounts, and you'd be surprised at how little of a adjustment can make such a difference in the long run. So we're just going to work through adjusting the body of this, and then we'll move on from there. Alright, so now we've got the center of lift balanced behind the center of mass. We're going to adjust our tail fins, and that should add to that even more. There we go. Just align it to the back. Try to make things nice. I spent quite a lot of time on these wings. Eventually I will make a little video kind of detailing that, probably when I make the video detailing how I make the plane. But here we are, we're putting on some landing gears on this, and now Typically, you don't want the landing gears on the wings like this. It makes taking off from the runway a little more difficult. However, we're going to be air launching this vehicle, so that means that we only have to care about landing on the runway. And having a wide stance like this will actually make landing on the runway much easier, so we're going to go for that. And as of always, you want to make sure that your landing gear, your back landing gear, is close to the center of mass while still being behind it. And lastly, on our build, we're going to put a couple drag chutes on here to help us slow down once we land on the runway. It's just in a little bit of addition because we don't have access to air brakes at the moment. So I'm going to go ahead and simulate this, and we'll figure out how it's going. So now with this simulation, I find out that I can't really exceed 390 meters per second, and I'm not really sure why. I have an upgraded version of this engine, so it's extra frustrating to me because I feel like I should be able to reach supersonic speeds and Mach 1 and all that. Later I will find out that it's because I'm flying at 7 kilometers above the surface, and there's still quite a lot of drag at 7 kilometers, and I would have done a bit better had I been higher. But this I did not know yet. The timestamp that I posted earlier, and I'll post right again right here, is when it is after I had asked for help on my design. And so once again, if you want to see the culmination of what that knowledge became, there's the timestamp. So now the wings were just too weak to be moving so quickly to make such a quick maneuver, and the sad part is that really wasn't that quick of a maneuver. So I'm gonna come in here and do some adjustments. However, and I don't actually end up coming to this conclusion until the next episode in our planes, but I've had access to supersonic wings this whole time, and for some reason I've just been using procedural ones. So I'm going to have some problems with the wings until I figure out that I should get some wings that are rated for supersonic flight. But anyways, here you can see me once again shortening my fuselage, making an even shorter plane. Not the right move, but I don't learn that yet. As far as why that's not the best move, I only know a little bit about the specifics of it, but in short, it makes your rocket harder to control. So our center of lift is pretty far behind our center of mass, but it shouldn't matter all that much. So make sure we have a pilot, and let's go ahead and simulate again. In this simulation, I can't break the 450 meters barrier for the supersonic flight, and so I'm getting a little frustrated with this. Also, I haven't used this automatic autopilot mod very much yet, and so I'm still trying to learn the details of it. And at one point I think to myself, well, if I can't reach 450 meters per second flying straight, then maybe I'll tip myself down a little bit, do a little bit of a nosedive, gather speed. But turns out in Ferrum Aerospace Research, it has realistic drag, so that is not the case. I actually slowed down during that point, so I was getting quite confused. But then also I realized that this wasn't a viable option because the contract requires for the sound barrier to be broken for no more than a 10-degree pitch change in either direction, so nosediving to get speed is not going to be the right answer. So once again, I'm going to go ahead and terminate that simulation and try to rework my plane again. Alright, so I'm going to take a quick look at the engine, see if maybe there's something a little bit better for us to work with. I do end up changing that once again, eventually. But this time, the major change that we're going to make is we're going to rethink these wings. Because how big those wings were adds extra mass and extra drag to it. And we don't necessarily need that. This is basically a rocket plane. It just needs to be a rocket body with a little bit of stabilization. So we're going to go ahead here and make these wings a little bit thinner. And we're going to bring it to the center of mass a little bit better. And that's starting to look more like a traditional X-plane. It took me some time to really come to the conclusion that adjusting the wings was a viable option. And so now I'm also looking at our tank utilization, and I'm coming again coming around to a longer body for our plane. Because in all reality, we don't need to have a full tank of fuel in there. We're only going a short bit, and we're only aiming to go really fast, so we don't need to have, hours worth of flight time for this. So I take a second and I work on the paint job, because as everyone knows, the paint job will actually increase the speed that your plane can go by 15% by having a wicked paint job. So we're going to go ahead and paint it this kind of army green, this olive green, and to continue with the gold wing family of aerospace technology, we're going to paint the edges gold. So I'm going to take a second and do this, and then we'll see how it flies after that. And at first, when I started using this GUI, I was a little bit confused at everything, but it turns out it's really as intuitive as clicking and clicking. Alright, so let's go ahead and check our stuff. I still have not configured the experiments to record the supersonic flight, but eventually I will remember to do that. Trying to move the wheels back a little bit, but having some trouble. And then I get distracted by painting the tail fin. I'm also painting the rails that the tail fins are attached to. Can't leave any bit untouched. I wish I could have painted the X-plane cockpit to also be that olive green, but I cannot. And finishing it up. And I decided to make these entirely gold. I think it looks better that way. Alright, so let's go ahead and simulate this and see what kind of changes we'll need to make after that. So the idea here is that maybe stronger wings might help. And then I play around with the idea of putting some SRBs on the back of this. Like, won't that make things go faster? Doesn't SRBs fix everything? It's what I've been learning in this playthrough, is that the answer to every problem is more boosters. So let's go ahead and check that out. So here we are. We've just been air launched and we're trying to regain control. Our engine kicks on, and I'll play for you the entirety of this test flight. So I go ahead and get my autopilot on, but it's not really going to help. And then I panic and I kick on the SRBs, and none of that is good. So that was the entire simulation right there. And sometimes that's how it is in RP1, you know, it's simulate, simulate, simulate until your eyes bleed. Something happened here with my center of mass and my center of lift. They got all smooshed around, and so I had to make some adjustments. So let's go ahead and do another simulation. Yep, it's about as good as it can be. And again, like I said, we've had access to supersonic wings this whole time, and I never quite put together the fact that I am making a plane that's trying to go supersonic with procedural wings that are not designed to. So the more you learn. And I firmly believe that you learn a lot by watching. You learn a lot by watching a tutorial, yes, but I feel like you learn quite a bit watching a career playthrough. You know, my struggle here is showing you what not to do, and for that, I think that kind of knowledge is pretty useful. As long as you get to the point where by the end of it, you do know what to do. So here we are at that little timestamp that we kept mentioning. Welcome everybody, come on in, take a seat. So now I have taken some time away from RP1, and I took a bunch of screenshots of my plane and the stats and all the figures of my engine and the materials of my tanks and whatnot. And I got some feedback from the people on the Kerbal Space Program Reddit as well as the Real Solar System Reddit. And I learned quite a bit from this. Primarily that the rocket needed to be longer, as we had mentioned before, but also that I could double up the engines here. I can make smaller tanks, make them little fillets to just kind of keep in the design that Calvin McClure had, and just tack these engines on, double them up, and that will increase my thrust, and that will help in the going supersonic. I did not include the wings, so nobody mentioned the wings, but yep, there we go. How many times am I going to mention the wings? Don't worry, we'll get to it. But yeah, and so doubling it up. Also, this is where I learned that by going at a higher altitude, I would have less drag, and therefore I would be able to fly a little bit faster and a little more efficiently. So that's another thing that we're going to be working on. And they told me to lose the rockets. The SRBs, just silly. Nobody needs this. So it was quite helpful. I learned a lot, and I'm very thankful for everybody who responded. And I just want to say to anyone out there, if you're trying to play this game, either RP1 or just standard Kerbal, that there's a pretty great community out there that's pretty helpful and enjoys helping. I want to put the SRBs on there so badly. I want to. I'm like, well, maybe they don't know what they're talking about. They don't know SRBs like I do. But it's a bad idea. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and bring our tail fin back once again. Now that we have a longer rocket and enough fuel to burn for the entirety of its of the engine's burn time. But once again, we're not going to need all that fuel. So our center of lift is in front of our center of mass, so we're going to adjust that a little bit. Wheels being all funky, we're going to put those back into place. And just kind of fix these up, make them a little bit better. And I want to have the front wheel lower than the back wheels. Typically with planes you want that the other way around because you want the plane to be able to take off a little easier. But with this plane I want it to be able to stick the landing and come down and land a little better. So I go ahead and I bring up the FAR analysis menu, and I check out some of the stats, and it's very interesting. A lot of information to be had here. I wish I could understand any of it, but I'm not really sure, but it looks pretty. These colors look interesting. Those lines, the yellow lines, a little ridiculous, but I kind of adjust my wings here to see what kind of difference they make. But I just undo that. I Control Z, because I don't know what I'm doing with that. So if you know what you're doing with the FAR analysis, I would love to hear any tips and tricks on using it in the comments. Please let me know. So let's go ahead and do another test, and in this test we actually broke the sound barrier. This plane completed the contract, and even got some science to boot. So we're gonna lower the strength on the wings again, because I feel that will lower its mass and make it fly better. I honestly don't know at this point. I'm just sliding that thing back and forth, making adjustments. Just give it the once over. Gonna save it up, simulate it again. Oh, excuse me. It hadn't completed the contract yet. It's still, we're getting there. We're almost there. I believe it's on this run that it completes the contract. But we're getting a lot better at flying with the autopilot, and that's encouraging. And this whole time as we're flying, I have my joystick in front of me. I'm using primarily those buttons to activate my engines and so on and so forth. I am using the autopilot to just keep everything level, but I still have the ability of flying with that. And we eventually will be doing some flying with that as well, especially when we start landing. We have to land by hand. We can't use the autopilot for that. And let me tell you, flying in RP1 is so much different than stock KSB. Oh, there you go. Once again, we became a rocket. So, again with these wings. But you know what I'm gonna say, so let's just make the wings a little stronger. Let's slide that slider back again. I'm sure it's doing something. And right back out to the simulation. But this time we managed to get up to speed. We're at 10,000 meters. We're at 469 meters per second. We have broken the sound barrier, and we are making some science. So all things considered, I would consider this a success. Let's go ahead and head back to the spaceplane hangar, and let's pretty this up before we put them into production. So let's go ahead up here into the search bar and search for decals, and that gives us a few options, but we're going to grab this text here, and we're going to put the name of the plane being the GXP1. So that's the Goldwing X-plane. And I go for this little US Air Force looking color. Play around with my font choices, and then I realize that I have the ability of setting an outline and a fill color, so I'm going to take this and make it white with a black outline to kind of make it stand out a little bit. Gorgeous. Look at some of the other details, but I don't really feel like going through them all, and the flag seemed a little big. So that's all the detailing I'm really going to do on it now. And I want to make sure that our parachutes were on the outside of our plane. There we go. So we're going to go ahead and save this. We're going to go ahead and look at the RP1 menu. And tooling is a little expensive, but not too bad. And considering that it brings the total of our rocket down from 3,545 funds per rocket all the way down to 1,770. So it is worthwhile. So we're back at the KSC, and now that we have completed our plane, we still have the 9 days to unlock the first tech node for the plane, but now we can go ahead and warp and be at ease knowing that we have a working prototype in hand. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and come back in. We're going to have to build a launch complex for this, or a hangar, if you will, because they're not exactly called launch complexes. Because see, if we try to launch it from right now, it'll fail the editor. So we have the option of a new hangar or an upgraded hangar. I'm not really sure on the difference between. If you do, please let me know, that would help. But I go ahead and go for the upgrade, because I feel like we already had the hangar to begin with. So we're going to go ahead and renovate that and then head back to the KSC window, because that's going to take some time, and we're not going to be able to put a plane into production until that's done. I'm looking to see if I can put people into the hangar to make it build faster, but alas, I cannot. But I'm checking my funds here, and I do have a surplus. I can hire a couple scientists, researchers, and afford to have our science come a little faster. Yep, it's still making positive. And our reputation and our confidence are still looking pretty great. Doing pretty well. The public eye is pretty happy with our space agency, and I'm pretty happy with our space agency as well. But now we are poised to start hurting Kerbals. We now have the ability of killing Kerbals, because now Kerbals' lives are on the line with our space program. So we'll see how much good graces those people give us in the coming years. So now that the hangar has been completed, I can hire on some people to work in it and make the planes come out a little faster. And we're going to do some hiring, enough hiring to bring our total staff at the hangar up to 80. And I think that'll be good. Nice balance between how much we have in the bank and how much we can afford to pay these people, versus how fast they can produce our planes. And I want to get started on these contracts. I want to start the X-plane program as soon as possible. So we're going to time warp ahead until we can afford to actually launch our plane, or to build our plane, because at the time being, we will have a little over $1,000, and these rockets are expensive. So, almost enough. We have 1507, and as you can see there, we need 1514. There's $7 more, and we could launch this rocket. However, I did not count correctly, and but I'm gonna go ahead and unlock these parts nonetheless. That way we'll be able to build our rocket, but once we try to put one out into production, we'll quickly see that we cannot. And just time warp ahead, make a few more dollars. You know, a few $100 more. That'll work. Let's go ahead and launch this. So there we are. It's in the build queue. It won't take too long, which is nice, but we are also going to need to train a pilot here. I'm not sure if this is new to the LC and P update or if this was in the standard RP1, because I think it might have been in the standard RP1. I just never got into planes when I played the earlier version. But we need to train our pilot Angela Watson how to use the cockpit. This will take a few days. We also have the ability of training her in the mission, which will take only a couple hours. But we're going to go ahead and get that started while the plane is waiting to be air launched. We'll try to time it up so her training ends around the same time the plane is ready. And with that, the training is up. Angela Watson's retirement date has been pushed back a little bit. And we're going to go ahead and get her trained in the mission as well. And that shouldn't take very long at all. You may be noticing that the next thing coming up in our queue after the training is something called the GW3 First Orbitals. And that is our launch complex for our orbital rocket. However, we're going to be looking at that at a later episode. I had to do a little bit of playing with time here because we are working on things simultaneously, but I want to keep certain episodes specific to certain themes, and today's theme is airplanes, so we can't really focus on going orbital right now. Angela Watson certainly can't. The plane is being ready for air launch, but it is nighttime, so we're going to go ahead and just time warp to the morning, so that way she can fly first thing in the morning. So there we are, the sun has risen. And let's get ready to air launch. But before we do that, we're going to save. I typically cut out a lot of the main menu things and like saves and things like that, but it is very important, so I kind of want to take a second to remind everybody. So we're going to go ahead and adjust our air launch distance, and we're going to make sure that we remember to pack a chute for Angela Watson. A parachute is crucial, and I don't know why it would start without it. But anyways, here we are on the launch pad getting ready to air launch. Let's go ahead and grab our autopilot assistant and we'll get ready. Alright, so we've got a lot riding on this. Everything counts. This is no longer a simulation. Godspeed. So here we are, dropped from the plane, trying to get our engine started up as soon as possible. Full throttle, gears up, ignition on. Then we get our autopilot on as quickly as we can, just to maintain a level heading. So we've got a good ignition, we've got good control, things are looking great. We're going to take a second here and open up our waypoint manager. And what we did is we placed a waypoint on the runway, so that way we'll be able to guide ourselves back that way. Let's go ahead and plug in the things that we need to in our autopilot. We want to climb to above 10,000 feet with a heading of 271. And we're just going to steadily climb until we get to our desired altitude. Our ascent is a little sharp, but it's okay. We seem to be able to handle it. I'm going to go ahead and get my cockpit's window open, as well as the mission window open, so we can keep an eye on our parameters. We're going to have the crude altitude record of 15 kilometers open, but we are not going to attempt it today. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit until we get to the altitude that we want to be at. It's just 1,100, 1,200 meters. That's good enough. The air is thin enough here, and we've tested it at this altitude, so we should be more than capable of completing the contract, as well as picking up some science for going supersonic. So I'm excited. So as you can see here, we reached Mach 1. We actually reached it a little while ago. We only needed to go 355 meters per second for that. So we've been going for a little bit of time now, and we should complete that contract in no time. The altitude hold was kind of getting in our way a little bit and forcing us to dive a little bit lower than I wanted, so changed it around to level back out again. And hopefully soon we'll be going fast enough to make some supersonic flight science, and hopefully with that science we'll be able to unlock the next node in our airplane technology and make even better planes. So as you can see, our speed is over 400 and slowly climbing. And then once we tip down more horizontally, it climbs a lot faster because we're no longer fighting the drag. And here we are. Our brakeless sound barrier contract has completed. It's just going to take a couple seconds to think about it. There we go. And so now all we have to do is return home safely. And our supersonic flight has started. And we still have quite a bit to go until we reach the KSC, so we've got time for this to collect its data. So we're going to time warp ahead, or fast forward ahead a little bit. And we're coming down, we're lowering our altitude because we're getting closer to the KSC. And then I turn up the throttle a little bit, and then I noticed that 3 out of the 4 engines are lit, whereas moments ago it was 2 out of the 4 because I was at half throttle, and then now I kicked it up to 75%, and so it was fun to see that, just that little detail right there, that the engine's lit. It was nice. This version of KSP is very fun and very satisfying when you can get it right. So we're heading back to the KSC, but we are heading back very fast. We have just kept going supersonic the entire way, and since we didn't need to keep our plane at any particular angle, we're just making all the quick maneuvers. As I had mentioned countless times in this video, these are not supersonic wings. It's also what I get for not testing completely. I tested this to make sure that I could fly, I tested this to make sure that I could control the aircraft, and I tested this to make sure that I can reach the speed that I needed to reach and complete the contracts, but I did not test landing. So I didn't realize how critical my wings would be, and the fact that they would always break off, no matter what, because they're not rated to be supersonic. So I go ahead and reload my save. I had quick saved after completing the contract, only to find that one of my engines fails to ignite. Flight science, flight data, causing an issue. So my aircraft is a little wonky, but I'm trying to regain control of it as best I can, while also getting our aircraft autopilot back up and turned on. We get it turned on in right enough time before we spiraled completely out of control. And I bring the cockpit window back up again because it is going to be our safety net. There is an eject button if we need to. Let's go ahead and get our plane reoriented. Even though we're missing an engine, we still seem to have some control over it. I kill the throttle and then bring it back on, just in a hopes that it might reignite the engine, but it doesn't, because it's a failure. So I don't think there's anything we can do to get that engine to relight. So we're gonna have to land this thing on one engine. And here I'm using some of the joystick to control, trying to regain everything, but it is fighting me. And I'm panicking a little bit. I'm not sure what exactly to do in the situation, so I still have yet to kill my throttle, so I'm going as fast as my engines can give me, given the circumstances. So I kind of hold this level for a bit, and we'll come back to the next part. So I'm now going below 400, no longer gaining supersonic science, but still going over Mach 1. Still fairly far out from the KSC. It's close, I can see it. Certainly can't swim to it. And once again, a maneuver going just a little too fast. Wings that aren't ready for it. And my plane starts coming apart. So I go to eject, but I'm at too high of an altitude. We cannot do that, so we're just going to have to hold on as tightly as we can. And hopefully Angela doesn't pass out from the G-forces. Sadly, I had the autopilot window up there, so I wasn't able to see the effect the G-forces had on her in the initial thing. We're going to go ahead and hit eject, and it takes a second, which makes me worried. We look at our contracts, and it requires us to return home safely. It doesn't say anything about the plane, just that our pilot needs to return home safely. So I staged the parachutes on the plane's body, but no such luck in having them pop yet. They might have been rated for a lower altitude. So considering that they're drag chutes and not a parachute, it's probably not enough to bring our plane safely down anyways. Time warp down a little bit to a lower altitude. Angela seems to be excited. She's not freaking out too much. She's a true intrepid pilot. And once more we reach for the eject button, we click it. The game pauses for a second as it tries to calculate the maneuver that we're about to take. All we can do is hold our breath. And moments later, Angela pops out of the cockpit and heads head first down to the ocean. I'm looking around for the parachute. It takes me longer than I would have liked to find it. It's at the bottom of the screen, but I go through every single one of those options before finding it. A little panicking a little bit, you know. This is our first X-plane mission, our first Kerbal. You know, this is the only Kerbal we've got working for us. We can't kill her just yet. But I do find the parachute button, and we pop it, and then it just kind of stays limp like that. So we just have to watch as she hangs. She had plenty of time to write her crew report in her head on the way down, and she is going to explain to the engineers exactly where they went wrong. You can just see the anger on her face. It's a calm, calculated anger. She wants to find the appropriate words to express her wishes in a future design. Because we started the program. We can't go back now. The public is watching us, and they demand planes. Pretty far from the KSC. But before we know, our parachute pops open, and we are destined to make a safe touchdown. Takes forever. We are going very slow. But we will eventually reach the ocean, and the Navy, the Kerbal Navy, will come out. Excuse me, the U.S. Navy. That's right. What am I talking? This is real Earth here, which means that we need to get to this Kerbal quickly because she's about to drown. So let's go ahead and recover her. And there we are. We have the headline of "Plane Breaks the Barrier of Sound." Angela Watson there, for wishing that they had taken a better picture. Maybe one of the plane. But here we are. We still have some time before our orbital rocket is ready. And we have extra missions that we can take. So we go and look at the xplane program. We'll find that the next one is something that we're already kind of capable of, and that's to go supersonic. But this one we need to have a jet engine as opposed to a rocket engine. So that was going to require another type of aircraft. But let's go ahead and take that preemptively for the next episode. And that's where I'm going to leave today's episode. I'm looking forward to doing more planes. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you're looking forward for more RP1. If you did, please consider giving me a like, drop me a comment, let me know your thoughts, and I will see y'all in the next one. Take care.